to the 36th Hayley-Roxanna Crafts Quick Crochet video, where I share information, hints and tips on one area of crochet in a short video. In this video, I am focusing on crocheting a traditional granny square. A traditional or classic granny square is a beginner-friendly foundational crochet motif characterised by groups or clusters of 3 treble crochet stitches in UK terms, or 3 double crochet stitches in US terms, worked into the space between clusters with chains to make the corners. I made this granny square with colour changes, but they can be made with one colour, especially initially when you are learning the process. As I am right-handed, these instructions are intended for right-handed crocheters. However, if you are a left-handed crocheter, you could use me as a mirror image, so you reverse the hand positions and orientation. I'm using DK yarn and a 4.5mm hook to demonstrate with, but the process is the same regardless of yarn weight and hook size. So there are a few ways of making a traditional granny square, but I'm going to demonstrate the method that I use. So I start with a chain of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Which I join together with a slip stitch into that first of the chain. So if I just pop my hook in there and slip stitch, like so, to make a circle to work into. You could also do a magic circle to start with, but this can be slightly more difficult. You then need to make 4 3 treble clusters into this circle with 2 chains between each cluster to make your corners. If you're using US terms, it's doubles that you're making, not trebles. But you start with a chain of 3 to count as your first treble stitch. 2, 3. And then we will do 2, so you just want to make sure you go into the middle of that circle you've made. Okay, so you've got your first 3 trebles to make your first treble cluster, and then we're going to do 2 chains. 1, 2, that's to make your corner, and then we'll carry on around with another 3 treble clusters. Once you have made the 2 chains for the last corner, you then want to join to the top of your chain 3 that counted as your first treble with a slip stitch just to complete the round. Like so. And if you want to close that hole up in the middle, if you just weave in that tail yarn around there and pull it tight and secure it, and that will close the middle up if you want, or you can leave the hole there as part of the pattern. That is down to personal preference. Before making the second round, I turn my work, as I find turning my work for each round helps keep the granny square square. I then slip stitch into the 2 chain corner space to start the next round. I will then start the round with the chain 3 to count as my first treble stitch. And I will make 2 further trebles into this space to count as my first cluster. Then pull that through. There we go. I will then move to the next corner in the round, and in this corner I will do 2 treble clusters with 2 chains in between them. So there's my first treble cluster. I will now make 2 chains to form my corner, and another treble cluster. I will then repeat that in the next 2 corners. Once I am back round to, come on, zoom in on it, thank you. Once I'm back round to the first corner, I need to make another 3 treble cluster into that corner space. I will then make my 2 chain to make that corner for this round. And then I just need to slip stitch into the top of the 3 chain that counted as my first treble for the previous, for that row. So I slip into there, just make a nice slip stitch. Like so. And then, it was a little bit fiddly, I can then turn my work and start my third round. So I start again with a slip stitch into that corner space and the 3 chains to make my first treble. I then do 2 more trebles into that corner space to make my first cluster. And then as I come along the side this time, I need to make a treble cluster into this space here between these 2 clusters. So I'm just going to do 3 trebles all into that space. Okay, so the hook is literally going into that space. Like so. And then into this corner, I'm going to do a 3 treble cluster, 2 chains and a 3 treble cluster. 2 chains and another 3 treble cluster into that corner. Like so. And then you just continue that pattern all the way around, so you're making a 3 treble cluster in all the spaces between treble clusters, and then a 3 treble cluster, 2 chains and a 3 treble cluster into each corner until you get all the way around back to the beginning, and you do a 3 treble cluster, 2 chains and slip stitch into the top. So I'm back round to the beginning, and I've done the last 3 treble cluster in that first corner, so I just need to do my 2 chains, 1, 2, and slip stitch into the top of that first chain 3 that counted as my first treble of the round. Like so. And then I can turn and make another round if I want to. And you just keep continuing with this pattern of putting 3 treble clusters between clusters in the spaces, and a treble cluster, 2 chain and a treble cluster in all the corners. If you do find it hard remembering where the beginning of your rounds are, you can always pop a stitch marker in the top of that chain 3 that you use to start your round, just to help remind you where it is. You can continue with the granny square until it is whatever size you want. You can even make a whole entire blanket using this pattern. You can also turn granny squares into a variety of items. So you can use a few to make up a blanket. You could also make cardigans out of granny squares, or you can make pouches and pencil cases and so many other things using granny squares. They're such a versatile project once you have got that basic pattern down, which is why they're so good for beginners. If you have any questions about making traditional granny squares, please pop them in the comments. And in the next quick crochet video, I will demonstrate open work.